I'm so excited to talk to you about one, your career, the choices you made, and then the experience you have in working with startups.
Thank you, Cedric. It's very nice to be here.
Great. So for the listeners, right? So you have a brilliant career. You started as a salesperson, and then suddenly you decided to become an entrepreneur. So maybe you can tell us a bit about these choices you have made, and why not another role? You were at a level where you would be a VP sales by now in a startup. So why have you made the choices of moving into Ramp as a partner?
Sure. So there's a lot of questions there, right? So let's try to unpack them from the beginning. So I'm originally from Greece, and I moved to the States when I was 17 for college. So when I graduated college, I decided to go back to Europe. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. For a while, I wanted to go to Italy and do agrotourism. And I had found a farm to go live on for at least a year while I figure it out. And then I received a call from my older sister, my half-sister, who's American. And she said, well, why don't you want to come work for me? She used to own a very big goat cheese company. So she said, why don't you want to come work for me? And that was about a week before I went to Italy. So I said, why not? I was 22.
Yeah.
So I flew back to the States. I came to New York. I had no prior connection to New York. And I was selling goat cheese for her. That was my first ever sales job.
And that's still far from the tech where you are now.
Yes. And I was doing outside sales. I was going to stores that were already clients or going to new stores door to door. And I would say, would you like to try my goat cheese?
Oh.
And there were a lot of great sales techniques that I learned during that time that were big lessons for me that we can talk about later on if you want. But that was my first job, and it can be very challenging working with family. So about a year in, I quit. And that was when I started my own company before going into tech. So because I had those relationships with supermarkets from that job, because I was seeing what's popular, now I also happen to be lactose intolerant, I was like, well, there's not a lot of options for people that are dairy-free. This is back in 2010. So all the different oat milks and cashew milks and almond milks were not popular, and the market wasn't saturated as it is today.
Yeah.
So my partner and I at the time started a non-dairy product drink. It was called horchata, but it wasn't the Mexican horchata, which is famous in the States. It was a Spanish horchata, which is made out of a nut called a trufa. So we were importing those from Spain and hand making a drink in Brooklyn. So we were manufacturing, distributing, and selling the product. And about a year and a half in, we had an offer from a bigger beverage company to buy us out, which we decided to take. So that was my first stab at entrepreneurship. And I joined my first startup in 2013, my first tech startup.
Great. But maybe be deeper. Why did you decide to sell and not maybe stay for a couple of years longer?
Sure. So the product had a lot of traction in different stores. We were even able to get into Whole Foods. And I think we were both very excited about what we were doing. I mean, we were doing everything. We had no employees. We were doing everything from milking the nuts, going to a kitchen every day in Brooklyn to do that, figuring out the design of the bottle, the logo, putting it on the shelves, making sure people buy it, doing demos in the stores. We were doing every single thing you can imagine.
Amazing.
And neither of us had experience doing that before, so it was very challenging. It was fun at times, but it was also very stressful because that's how we were paying our bills. We both had side jobs, but that's also a way we were trying to generate income. And as I mentioned, the product had great traction, but we weren't profitable. And I think we were both very young. We weren't sure how we would continue. And that's the main reason why we decided to sell.
Yeah, clear with an amazing story. And there you had a first feeling for entrepreneurship, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, obviously. So great. So we can go deeper into this a bit later, and because I'm sure there are a bunch of lessons you took there now when you talk to founders. So let's go on. So in 2013, you started your first tech job.
I joined my first tech startup. There was a company called Main Street Hub, and we were selling social media management services to small to medium-sized businesses.
Okay. Yeah.
Restaurants, retail. And that was when I really learned how to sell. I had a great baseline from working for my sister, working for myself, but that was a whole different animal because it was inside sales. It was very high volume cold calling. And I talk about this a lot, but I believe that the people that cold call, just because it's a very hard job due to the amount of rejection that you get and the volume you need to be pumping out daily, I think it taught me everything I know about selling. And I also believe that if you can successfully cold call, you can sell anything. But, you asked me why ramped, why am I not a VP of sales? I never wanted to go into leadership. I struggled a lot in the beginning when I started my first tech job. I wasn't very good. And I learned how to be good. And then I was consistently in the top 1-2% in any company I've been to. And I loved that. I loved being responsible for myself. I loved being responsible for my own numbers, my own success. And I didn't want to have a team under me. And the truth is that, and the people that are in those positions know that very well. I mean, it's already very stressful to be a sales rep where you need to hit your numbers every month and then kind of do it all over again. But especially being a VP of sales, I mean, it's so difficult. It's so stressful because very often you're not even able to do your job the way you want it because your VC has demands you need to meet.
Yeah.
Leadership has demands you need to meet. You need to manage them. You need to manage yourself and your own emotions. You need to manage your reps. And that's not a position I wanted to be in. And also financially, if you're doing well as a sales rep, very often you can be making as much or more than your VP. So I just did not want that extra responsibility. I always loved training. I loved coaching. So I was looking for those roles internally. But the companies I was with were always that small that we still didn't have a sales enablement role. So there was not a path available to me. So what I've done is, prior to coming to Ramped, I really haven't stayed at a company for more than 2.5 years. So I would join very early, typically at seed or pre-seed, help the company scale, get to a certain point, and then there was not really an opportunity for growth for me unless I wanted to go into leadership. There were no other roles available, which is very often the case for sales reps. So I would jump over and go somewhere else and do that all over again and learn some new skills, learn a new product, and also have the ability to make more money.
Yeah, great. And absolutely, when sales reps really are nailing it, their salaries are something to really like, wow, it's the satisfaction is really there. And if you look at the path you chose, then there's another path going into enterprise sales, into key account management. Why not that path?
So I was actually an a key account manager for a very short time. My second startup, which also became acquired, so Main Street Hub was acquired by Wix. By GoDaddy. My second startup, Flock, was acquired by Wix. And that's when I was thinking, well, I'm really good at building relationships. I take these wherever I go. What if I try account management? And I was a key account manager for Flock and then at Wix. But the funny thing is that when I was there, leadership would tell me, you should really be in sales. And then at my next startup, Seated, which is very big in New York for any New Yorkers listening to the podcast, I was a salesperson. So I think that sales is really where I should be.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so you spoke about the lessons you learned while you're selling door to door the goat cheeses. what did you pick with this from you when you started your inside sales job?
What lessons did I take from there that I
Yeah.
I think humility is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Because when you're young, you don't necessarily know that you need to be humble, and I think you're very cocky about things that you think you know. And what I learned selling to different supermarket vendors is that typically I would see, people like me come in trying to sell their products. Mm-hmm. And they would all sort of have an air of entitlement and my product is the best and this is why it should be in your store. Yeah. And very often they would get shut down. And I would observe that and I would think, that's interesting. So then what I started doing every time I would go into the supermarkets, I would tell the team lead or whoever I was interacting with, is there anything I can do to help you? I have a little bit of time. Can I help you stock the shelves? Can I help you remove anything out of the way? Is there any promotional material I can bring? If the demos are really working well for you, I'm happy to come do more demos in the store. I would literally stand with a little table and demo my product. And I would try to be a resource for them other than, hey, here's a cool product you can sell, but what can I do to help you? And I cannot tell you, as simple as this sounds, how many doors that opened for me and how happy they were to have me in the store and how my product would get better placement and how if I needed to take a break or if I needed to change my schedule or if anything came up, they were more than happy to accommodate because in a way they saw me as an extension of the team versus here's this vendor that wants to come in and sell me product.
Yeah, which is also, if you look at about it, the typical thing, it's about me versus what can I do for you?
Yes.
And you asked it literally. And that's once as a salesperson, when you make that mind shift, as you say, the doors go open, your conversion rates, they skyrocket. So really brilliant. And then when you start the inside sales job, how did you start your first days after the onboarding? What did you do? And then with your luggage from going door to door, selling into retail, how did you start that completely new chapter?
So when I always tell this story because I think it's important for everyone that's starting at a new job or learning a new skill set. When I started at my first inside sales job, I was very bad at the job. I thought I would be very good because I had successfully sold my own product. But inside sales and outside sales are very different. So you get a lot of rejection in both of them, but if you're in person with someone, you're able to charm them. They may give you some more time. Over the phone, you only have a few seconds to build rapport and for the prospect to give you the right to continue the conversation. But most often than not, you get the phone slammed on your face.
Yeah.
So when I started, I was very weak. I was not good. And the company had a rule that you have 3 months to ramp. And if you don't hit your numbers, you had quota during those first 3 months, just not as high as tenured reps, you're out. And I could not close a sale to save my life. But I really wanted the job. So, and it was a matter of pride too. I did anything I could do to learn. So what I did was this, the office was very small. There were less than, including managers, there were less than 10 people there. Mm-hmm. So I went to the top 2 sales reps and I said, can I shadow you? Can I sit next to you when you're making calls? Can I take you to lunch and get some tips from you? Can I come early and practice with you? I would listen to my own calls. I had a boyfriend at the time who whenever I would see him, I would say, hey, I need to practice my sales pitch with you. Can you role play with me? I would stay at the office really late. I remember there were nights where I would force my manager to stay with me till 10, 11 o'clock and say, I need to get this done. You need to help me. So there were people that were willing to help me, but I was responsible for my success in the sense that I would push them. I would not take no for an answer because I wanted to nail this.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it happened overnight, which it did not, but that's how it felt, because there was a point where I became good within the 3-month mark. And then after that, there were 2 promotions that were offered, which people would get every about 4 months, 5 months each. I got them both in a span of 3 months. I worked my ass off, and I remained very good because then I had learned the best practices, the skill set, all the tools to remain there. But it was a lot of work and a lot of persistence and a lot of focus.
Yeah, what I hear here a lot. So on the one hand, you have learning to be humble. You had a gap in skills to be successful in inside sales. But you had the drive and the grit to persevere and to learn. And that grit, where does it come from? And when you talk to founders, is it something that you can use in getting that grit, getting that persistence, or am I wrong here?
I think you can learn how to be coachable. I think you can learn how to sell. You can sit down with someone and they can teach you, but I don't know if grit's something that's learned. And I couldn't give you a good answer of, where I got it from. I would assume it's prior life experiences, just, family experiences. And the fact that when I was 17, I came to the States on my own without knowing anyone here. Like, there wasn't a family waiting for me. I came and, I remember the first night I landed at the airport. There was no one there to pick me up. It was 1 a.m. There were no taxis. It was a tiny little airport in the middle of the country. And I somehow managed to make it to where I needed to be. And there were just a lot of those stories in college. So I think it's something that if the life circumstances are there, you develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. I believe this too. When I go back to what you just said, right? Shadowing, for me, that's also absolutely crucial. How do you do it now? Are you still shadowing? Because my assumption right now, we haven't discussed your period at that ramp yet, is that you both combine the strategy, but then also the execution. So how do you look at shadowing, and how do you look at people that are reluctant in shadowing or being shadowed?
I understand their reluctance in shadowing other people. I understand their reluctance in role-playing, but it's just something you need to get over with. It's like the water's cold, I don't want to go in and swim. Well, you're either going to get in the water or you're not, right? Yeah. And it's something I say to teams I work with. There's no middle road. You're either going to do it, and if you want to do it, I'll give you all the tools to be able to do what it is you want to do, or you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good one. It's very important. And the role playing, you just mentioned role playing. Many people, when I start talking to this, but it's artificial. However,
of course
for me,
it's artificial until it feels natural.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started using a script at Main Street Hub, it felt very artificial to me, and my gut reaction was to want to change it and make it my own. And I remember our director would tell me, "You are not allowed to change it until you master it. After you master it, you can change a bit, but until then, you need to read it word for word." And it's a great practice and discipline. And I'll never forget this. So when I was still learning, there was a guy, Mike, who I'm still friends with to this day, who was the top sales rep at the time. And I used to watch him work. He was very calm, cool, and collected, and he would sit back in his chair with the phone, and he sounded almost monotone. And on every call, he would say exactly the same words, same intonation, same pauses everywhere. And because he knew the script so well, he would know exactly what sort of reactions to expect from the prospect. when they're going to ask a question, what are they going to say? He had truly mastered it. And for me as an outsider, I was thinking, oh, he sounds like a robot. Terrible.
Yeah.
But his numbers were there, and now I understand why.
Yeah. And what about high performers that when they get in that routine, some start cutting corners because it might exactly become monotone and doing all the time the same. How do you prevent this from happening?
I think it's really what works for everyone. So I'm thinking of myself as an example and a sales rep at another company, and we were both the top salespeople. He was very specific with the script, and he had it in front of him and he would read off of it. I always had the script printed out, but I got into a point, especially when we were calling restaurants, and I would run into a French restaurant or a Greek restaurant or an Italian restaurant, which are all languages I speak. I would just go off the script and just, try to connect with that person and speak to them in their language. And that worked really well for me as well, because it was the rapport aspect of it. But as a golden rule, I always like to say follow process, stick to the script. When you're more tenured, you don't need to read it word for word, but you should use it as a guideline.
Yeah. True. Cool. Let's go to the next stage in your career. So you joined Ramped. Can you tell us a bit more about what is Ramped, why you made a decision to join Ramped in your role as a partner, and what are you doing there?
Sure. So Ramped is a boutique consulting firm. We work with early stage technical founders, pre-seed to Series A. And what we do is we help them build out their first sales playbook, their go-to-market strategy, and we teach them how to sell. So Darren, who is the CEO of the company, Darren Lucia, was a manager at Main Street Hub when I joined. So I actually met him back in 2013. And the company has been around for 5 years. We've worked with over 150 startups at this point. And the reason I joined is because I think I wanted to do something else. I was at a company I really loved when I thought about Ramped. I was at a company called Seated, and my job was flying around the country and opening new markets for us, which I absolutely loved. I've always loved working with restaurants. I love the product. I had joined the company really early. Up to that point, Seated was my dream job. And what happened is COVID came.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were told the news, where it started really becoming serious in the States, I was in Chicago on a company trip, and I had to fly back in New York. And back then we were all thinking, oh, it's only going to last a month or 2 months. Maybe by June it's going to be over. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew. So what happened is Seated furloughed a big number of their employees and everyone in the sales department, including myself. And that's when I was thinking, I don't know how long this furlough will last, but what do I want to be doing next? So I started speaking to mentors, and someone mentioned, Carol, you'd be really great in consulting. So I reached out to Darren immediately, and I said, listen, I don't know when I'll be going back to my job, but I love what you do at Ramped, and I'd love to come work with you. And he said, sure, why not? So when Darren said that, a couple of days later, Seated brought me back. I was the first person they brought back from the sales team. And I was in sort of that dilemma of what do I want to do? I'm excited about consulting, but I love this company. I want to go help them grow and get back on their feet. Yeah. And I did both jobs for about 9 months, both consulting and Seated. Yeah. And I was absolutely exhausted. In fact, my body shut down. And that's when I decided, I need to choose one or the other. So I chose consulting. And I absolutely love it. I've always loved being a part of early startups and helping them grow and wearing lots of hats and being professionally scrappy and getting things done. It's great to be able to work with multiple companies like I am right now, multiple startups, and help them grow versus just being married to one.
Yeah, that's true. That's also what I love. I mean, you meet a lot of founders, you talk to a lot of different people, the viewpoints you gain, and you said 150 startups in that brief period of time. It's quite a high pace that you have. Then, so how do you manage to be so structured to be able to deliver to 150 startups? What is the system that you use, or how do you get on with it?
So we've done 150 startups in about 5 years.
Yeah, which is
so
still,
it's really not a lot.
Yeah. Basically, it's every 2 weeks one, if you look at it. So it's 30 per year.
We won't work with only one client at a time.
Yeah.
We'll have about 2 to 3 clients at any given time. And we're at a very good spot. We're very grateful that we're able to choose the companies we work with. Mm-hmm. So we only work with companies that we feel we can really help. And that also helps in being able to manage our time and give as much as we can to the clients we work with.
And then when you hand over the sales playbook, let me say it as a physical thing, is it then is the relationship then over, or do you remain in contact? Do you have some monitoring, or how does it work then?
It depends on the company. So the way we work is we'll have a sort of a first discovery call to understand where the company is, what their needs are, if we're able to deliver. Yeah. And then we'll walk them through a scope showing them what our playbook will look like, the length of the engagement, cost, etc. And then if we both agree that it's a good fit, our engagements are typically 7 to 8 weeks. So they're very short. Yeah. And there's a lot packed in that time. So the playbook is 100% custom built for the client. Mm-hmm. And while we're building it, we're walking them through different training deliverables and coaching them on how to go to market. And we've had a lot of great success stories helping people get from 0 to $1 million in ARR in 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. We've had people we've invested in their companies. We've had companies that were able to raise their Series A because of us. So the time is short. And then depending on the company and their needs, I'd say about 50% of our clients choose to stay on in some sort of retainer, especially if the company has a sales team. And to be honest with you, those are my favorite ones, just because I've been a salesperson myself for so long. I love working with teams. We'll stay on longer, and we'll mostly focus on what we were talking about before: coaching, role-playing, listening to calls. And at the beginning, it's funny because, there's an unwillingness from the reps to do that because it's new. But once they get into it, just because they get so much value, I think they all really enjoy it.
Yeah, great. I love it. And exactly when the first people, they're a bit reluctant. They might see it as a control. They will assess me rather than a way to grow. And once they understand it's a way to grow, you really see them accelerating. I love when you see that change in the eyes when, I got it. And then you really see them accelerating. I call it the aha-Erlebnis in German, the aha moment. That's brilliant. And how do you shift between that strategic part and then that operational part? And then we go deeper into talking about the founders, working with the founders then.
The strategic part and the operational part in terms of what? I lost you there.
First of all, building the sales playbook, and then the execution in going into that operational mode of going to that shadowing, going to that sales play mode.
I mean, it happens simultaneously, but most often when we have... Okay, so let me take a step back. When we're working with founders, technical founders, the role-playing and the shadowing doesn't really happen, right? What does happen is we ask all of our clients to go out, record their conversations with prospects and send them to us. And that's when everyone, no matter what their product is, will tell us that they get the most value. And it makes sense because that's when they're starting to build a sales intuition and understand, okay, what are people really saying? How am I supposed to respond, etc. With sales teams, it's more coaching because there's more people involved and there's things that they can do with each other that are interactive, that I'll suggest, I'll intervene, I'll manage, etc. But it happens simultaneously. Yeah. Like there's not a clear cut of now we build the playbook, okay, now let's go coach. because the playbook is a living, breathing thing. So sometimes we may have assumptions on this is what's going to work. Then depending on our calls, we may need to go back and change things, change a sentence here or there, add a component, whatever it may be. So it happens at the same time. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Learning new products, learning new companies, every different product. You know, you may have a different sales strategy, classic sales motion, product-led growth, bottoms up, tops down. So it's a lot of work for us too. But I think we both really love it.
Okay. Sounds great. And when we talk about working with the founders, we spoke already briefly about it. I see your post on LinkedIn talking about it. The realization, if and when founders talk or start talking to their customers or perceived customers, that there might not necessarily be a product market fit. How do you handle this? How you coach them in this?
So the first step is to start to speak to their customers.
Yeah, true.
A lot of people have an aversion to it, or they have all kinds of negative stereotypes about selling, which I understand on one hand, because that's a stereotype, but you need to get over those if you are to scale. There needs to be a big mindset shift that says, okay, I'm the founder. If I want to scale my business, if I want to test the market, I really have no other option. I need to go out and start selling. And I'll tell this to almost everyone when we are about to decide to start working together, that if you have any doubts, if you're not ready, if you don't feel like you're going to be coachable, then we're not a good fit. Because I'm not selling for them. I'll do everything in my power. I'll spend all the time that I can. I'm on Slack 24/7. I'll hop on calls with them to get them to where they need to be, but I'm not the person selling for them. So if they're not putting in the work, if they're not trusting the process, if they're not listening, if they're not coachable, there's only so much I or anyone can do. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So if with a coach, and I think that's the case for every coach, if I have a personal trainer, but I don't go to the gym, or I don't do what he or she tells me, I'm not going to see results. It's not up to the trainer, it's up to me. So it's the same with a sales coach, it's the same with any type of coach. People need to be ready, and they need to understand how important this is.
Yeah, true. And that there's the emotional component. So once you're over the aversion of talking to customers, when people start talking to customers, it might be that, or it probably will be that the product is not necessarily what the customers need. It might be a nice to have, but definitely not a need to have. Do you help them in also shifting them in helping them decide, okay, what to do to make it a product market fit? Because there's an emotional attachment to the original product, to the assumptions, compared with the reality that the product should be moving in.
So to your point, the market will indicate whether it's something that they need or not. I can help them in terms of messaging and positioning, but in terms of what pivots to make, no, that's not really my call. Yeah.
Okay, clear. And do you see some aversion, like when people start talking to customers, that what they hear is not what they want to hear, and say, oh, no, that's not true, it's not the way it is?
Thankfully, it's not often. I would say that's the case with maybe 1 out of 10.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, good to hear. Great. And any other things that you see with founders where they're struggling with, maybe on on the founder-led sales, and then moving into building sales teams?
I think just the biggest thing when you're doing founder-led sales, and I talk about this to clients a lot, is just building that sales muscle, building that sales intuition, where when you've done enough reps, you understand, okay, this is what needs to happen here. This is how I move the conversation forward. This is why the prospect is ghosting me. This is the price that's going to work for this client. These things start to become intuitive and second nature after you followed the right process and you do it enough times. But then to your point about, having a sales team, it's when that shift in roles changes from founder salesperson to founder sales manager. And again, I always say, make sure before you hire talent that you do have strong indications of product market fit, and that you do have a solid sales process in place that people can plug into from day one. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting their time, your time, and you're going to be wasting money.
Yeah, and if you look at the process, when you speak about the sales process, maybe a few things that are absolutely no-go, don't do it, and then a few things that you should absolutely have in a sales process.
There's a lot.
I know, that's why I was like, but it's opening really a big topic, I know. The first thing that comes to mind for you.
Absolutely do not skip the discovery or qualification part. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is just demo blindly without knowing where your prospects are or not understanding their decision-making process, their needs, their timeline. So that's number one. Absolutely do not give your product out for free. Don't do free pilots. Absolutely be the one to be following up and pushing the conversation forward. It's not the prospect's job to do it. Absolutely don't interrupt people when you're having sales calls. I listen to so many calls, and I love listening to calls. It's one of the most fun parts of the job. And, very often I'm like, stop talking. Shut up. Don't say anything. Like, stop interrupting your prospect. There's so many times when people are answering our questions and telling us what we want, and we'll just interrupt them. So that's a big one. And the biggest thing is just have even a basic process to know these are the different steps to walk someone from a lead to a paying customer. These are the different actions I want to take. Don't try to wing it. It's not going to work.
Yeah, great. I love them all, and we can go in so much more deeper into any of them. There have been books written all over them. So great. So we are coming slowly but surely to the end of the podcast, and there are 3 questions I asked to all the guests. So the first thing, and it's also a pretty open question. So what do you wish you would have done differently
in my career so far?
Yes.
It's not an action in the sense of, oh, I wish I wouldn't have joined this company and joined another, or, oh, I wish I would have gone for a VP of sales role versus being an individual contributor. It's more so, I wish I wouldn't have doubted myself so much. Because as a female in sales, often being the only female on the sales floor or not having female leadership to talk to, it's been very lonely, and I've doubted myself of, am I good enough to be here? Will I only be successful for this month and then mess up next month, which has never happened. But these thoughts have haunted me for a very long time. So if I was to do it all over again, I would pat myself on the back and say, you're good to go. Just keep going.
Yeah, great. And this is really something that people should talk more openly about, the so-called imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And it has to with many different things. Exactly when you're all alone as a woman in a sales team, it can have exactly a big impact. Also, if you're a foreigner coming into something completely new, you might have a huge skill set, but you set yourself so absolutely getting that doubt out of your system, believing in yourself, and you show that you have it. The second question, do you have a book or podcast that you're listening to that are very inspiring for you, for your sales skills or your well-being?
I read a lot. I don't listen to as many podcasts as I should. I'll definitely listen to this one.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
But, for me, motivational books help me. Or business books where, a lot of them are stories of how I got to where I wanted. Just because it shows you what's possible. I can't think of a specific book. I can give you a list of books that I think salespeople should read. But I can't think of a specific book that's sort of my go-to for inspiration.
Okay, then what are the top 2, top 3 books that salespeople should read?
The top one is Influence by Robert Cialdini. He was a psychologist, and I think he worked at Stanford as a professor of psychology, and he conducted a study over several years in different sales floors, where he studied different patterns of how people sell effectively and why people buy. So I think that's a fantastic read. Another book, which is not strictly a sales book, but I think it helps because sales is about process and sales is about being consistent, is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very easy read, very effective.
True. Yeah, great. Sounds great. Yeah, great titles, and everybody should read them, definitely. The third and the final question for you is then, when is it time for somebody to shift, to pivot? Like you decided to move into consulting, to change your career, founder shift every day. So when is it time to shift so that doesn't drag on too long?
For me, because I'm not a technical founder, it was a very personal decision. So when we're talking about when to shift into a new role, I don't think anyone can tell you that. I think it's a matter of, are you happy where you are? Is it contributing to your skill set? And is it contributing to your income? If that's the case, stay. If that's not, if you're not learning or if you're not making money, and especially if you're not happy, leave. It's not like, during our parents' time, my mom stayed at a job for 30 years. Same with my dad. That's not the case anymore. I've jumped every 2 years, and not only has it not negatively affected my resume, I've made more money at every job, and I've learned more things at every job, so I don't regret that decision. For technical founders want to pivot, again, there's not a set time where we can say, okay, you've done 3 pivots, maybe it's time to pivot again. Yeah. But of course, you'll see if you've tried everything you can, if you have a process for reaching out, if you're testing the market and people are not responding, if people are not running to your solution, then maybe you should really see how are my assumptions really playing out, because we're talking about assumptions in the beginning. Another thing is a lot of founders build for the future versus, what's a big problem right now? Yeah,
true. Because then you need money now, you need revenue now, so you need to have a fit now. Yeah, great insights. Thank you very much. Carol, I absolutely enjoyed our conversation. Your knowledge of sales, founders is staggering. Your drive and your grit. I wish you all the best with Ramped and in your further career and in working with the founders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.